Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of EmeraldPlanet, EmeraldPlanet TV, as we come to you live from the Washington Convention Center with the Washington Auto Show. This is an annual event that comes and brings the very best of technologies and also the best green cars that are being developed, built, and sold on the planet. And so it's very important that we actually cover this important story because the ever gaining momentum and the evolution as far as the improvements to the automobile for energy efficiency, for safety, for comfort, all the things that we're looking for in our vehicles. And I have somebody who really is an expert in all this. This is Joe Koch. He is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of the Washington Automobile Dealers Association, and also he is the Assistant Director of the Washington Auto Show. And Joe, welcome to the EmeraldPlanet TV.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
We're really glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about what is WANADA.
So WANADA stands for the Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association. So we have about 200 new car dealerships here in the DC metropolitan area, and we serve basically everything the dealers would like. And the biggest thing that we do every year is, of course, we own and operate the Washington Auto Show here, which comes around every late January here in DC. It's one of the largest auto shows in the country and indeed in the world.
Well, the whole thing about it, this is really what's called a Tier 1 show, and you're in the top 5.
That's right.
Tell us about this tier situation and why it's so important as far as the Washington Auto Show.
Sure. So there is a governing body of all of the automobile manufacturers and auto shows around the world. In Europe, called OICA, O-I-C-A. Don't ask me what that stands for. It's French. I would butcher the name. But they identify all the auto shows around the world that are some of the largest or most important shows in the world, and they classify them by tier. So we are a Tier 1 show, as you said, which basically means that we're a show of the highest stature, importance, and significance on the world stage.
And having it here in Washington, D.C., you're the national policy show. Now, this is something that's unique to just this particular show here. And also, it's unique in the world because it really focuses on policy. So tell us a little bit about why is policy so important to the automobile dealers and to the industry itself?
Right. The Washington Auto Show is the public policy show on the world stage. We're the only auto show with the White House, with Congress right down the street. So we do a number of events before the show opens to the public, to consumers, that we call our public policy days. When you look at the automotive industry right now, there's a seismic shift going on as the software industries are colliding with the automotive industry. The umbrella term for that is mobility. So we have an event that we call Mobility Talks International. It's a 2-day international symposium where we bring in thought leaders, political leaders, lawmakers, and experts from universities and other things like that from around the world to come in and talk about what are the best practices for regulating some of these emerging technologies like connected and autonomous cars.
Now, looking at this whole thing, I know you mentioned the word regulation. And, of course, many people say, ooh, regulation. But when you talk about the fact of what we want to do is we want to monitor all this so people are getting the very best technology that's going to protect their safety, give them the comfort, and also the outreach, because the automobile now is really, it's a big computer that has a car attached to it.
That's
in many
exactly
cases.
right.
So tell us about this connectivity between the computer, the car, but also the internet.
Right. When we talk about the regulation of automobiles, the two things that policymakers are trying to hold in balance is keeping consumers safe without stifling innovation. And that's a very tricky balance to maintain, particularly right now. The technology is far outpacing the regulation that seeks to regulation that seeks to regulate the technology. But technology is way ahead, and so the policymakers really have a lot of gains that they want to make as far as making sure that the vehicles that are constantly connected to the internet are safe, that your data that the vehicle is recording is safe, that the vehicles are operating in a safe manner, and at the same time, we don't want to over-regulate such that the auto manufacturers, the suppliers, and other technology companies can't produce materials that are going to keep their products really at the cutting edge.
Yeah, I was one of the first, actually we were the first training program on the East Coast that did the CCC, Computer Command Control, when that first came out with General Motors. And so it's evolved at a very dramatic pace, and also the improvements and enhancements to that is incredible. But also people are concerned because some folks have experience where people actually hacked into their computer and created things that they really didn't want. So how do and going into this as far as the cybersecurity, which really relates to your automobile as well as now your refrigerator and your stove, and
that's right,
everything else, and this Internet of Things. So how do we mesh all of that together?
We had a really interesting panel here last Tuesday on that very topic. So as a part of our Mobility Talks International, cybersecurity is on the top of everyone's mind with some of these emerging technologies. We had the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We had a law firm that's advising a lot of the automakers on this. We had the head of IT ISAC, which is an advisory council on a lot of these issues, come in and talk about a lot of the things that the auto manufacturers are doing. It's a really interesting conversation. Now, the auto manufacturers themselves actually don't want to get out there and talk about what they're doing, because the more information that they put out to the public, the more information they're giving to the enemies,
the hackers.
Correct. So as far as the specifics, there's not a lot out there in the public domain, but as far as general principles are concerned, there are certain things that that they talk about. So, for instance,
the manufacturers and then also the dealers have to be very cognizant of this. And I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of pressure from the public to make sure that their automobiles and themselves are absolutely as safe as possible.
Absolutely. Especially these days, all of your private information is on the internet somewhere, and people are kind of uncertain about this idea that their car might be storing that information as well. And also receiving information, the idea being that if a car can receive information, then somebody can maybe send in bad information to do things to the car, to pull things out that we wouldn't want.
Yeah, looking at this whole thing, let's go to the fun aspect.
Yeah.
We talked about all the technology and all the security issues and cyber and all that, but let's go to the fun. What's happening in automobiles that actually is enhancing the quality of the drive, the feel of the drive, and just sheer joy of being out on the road?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is EmeraldPlanet, so we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the dramatic eco technology that's on display here at the Washington Auto Show.
Of course.
The energy efficiency. We have the all-new Chevrolet Bolt right behind us here. That's the first car that can get 238 miles on a single charge. So you're talking about an electric car that's really going to reduce range anxiety for a lot of people. So we expect that to be a big seller here in the DC market. We have the all-new Ford F-150. Now, when people think big trucks, they don't typically think about fuel economy, but the new Ford F-150 has got an EcoBoost twin-turbo V6 that is one of the most fuel-efficient motors in any pickup that there is, and with a lot more aluminum in that car as well, in that truck, I should say, as well. It has reduced the weight, and so you're getting a better fuel economy than we've ever seen in the pickup segment.
And of course, the whole thing about the fuel economy, 54 miles per gallon, is really on the horizon.
Yep.
How is that actually pushing not only the fact that, hey, we have to do it, but secondly, the innovation and the sustainability of the vehicles?
Absolutely. That comment really goes back to what we were talking about earlier with regulation. We see how the United States government has regulated what can and should be on the American roads. And what that has done is created an environment where the auto manufacturers have this level that they have to get to, and excuses aren't going to cut it when it comes to the U.S. government. So they really are pulling out all the stops to make sure they meet that corporate fuel economy standard. And we've seen innovation that is just phenomenal. The Bolt, like I said, is a big one of those. A lot of the import manufacturers have been ahead in this. Obviously, the Prius being one of the most recognizable fuel-efficient cars. We have the all-new Hyundai Ioniq downstairs, which is an excellent example of that technology as well. So the manufacturers are doing what they have to do to make sure they meet that standard.
Now, going back to WANADA and the work that it's doing, how is it meeting the demands of the dealers to keep up with all this advancing technology. I'm sure the manufacturers are helping in that.
Sure.
But your organization is critical into the education for the dealers.
That's right.
But also you have the special training program that my Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. is a very proud sponsor of.
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about that.
So that's called the Automobile Dealer Education Institute, or ADEI for short. And one of the things that we do here in the DC market is we take young aspiring technicians and we give them on-the-job training plus education at zero cost. Now, this is the type of education that would cost $30,000 or $40,000 in a 2-year program at a large nationally for-profit technical school that we provide for free. We guarantee them a job. You can go to adei-programs.org to find out more about that information if any young aspiring technicians are watching. But it's a phenomenal
more important than
program.
that we actually provide their tools.
That's
and
right.
And also, too, they get this national certification. So if they move to Florida, go to California, out to Hawaii, that certification follows all the way through.
That's right. The program
that's very
is
important.
The program is NATEF certified, and as a Rotarian, you know, the Rotary clubs in and around the Washington, D.C. area sponsor a $2,000 set of starter tools for each of our students that get admitted.
And also, it's open to women.
That's right. Absolutely.
Very important to know.
All ages, all races, all genders. It is a very inclusive program, and we're happy to accept all the applications we can get.
And the salaries are excellent, too.
A lot of technicians who work hard and have been doing it a long time and are very skilled make more money than I do. Yeah, you can do very well as a technician.
Well, Joe, we're just about out of time. So looking at WANADA, what do you see for the growth and development of the organization itself, say, over the next 5, 10, and 15 years?
Oh, sure. Well, the dealers are always going to be here. The franchise car system is in place to protect consumers, and we're very happy to be able to play that very vital role. In addition to our dealership members, we have what we call kindred line members, which are related services providers. So, for instance, the company that sells oil or paint to the car dealerships, or that sells and services the lifts in the service departments. Those types of organizations are growing and flourishing right now in the DC area with record sales. All these beautiful cars here at the Washington Auto Show, people can come down and see that you can't walk through this show floor without wanting to buy a new car. So we hope everybody's going to come down and find their next car at the Washington Auto Show.
Okay. All right, we're rolling out right down the road on this. This is Joe Koch, who is the COO, Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association, and also the Assistant Director for the show. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the woods.
Well, it's some matches and that's no good.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Only spice. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
Just like you're having an ice cream cone.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent.
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of EmeraldPlanet and EmeraldPlanet TV. We come to you on a weekly basis from Washington, D.C., and right now we're coming to you live from the Washington Convention Center at the Washington Auto Show. This is a very prestigious and internationally renowned show that features the best of the best as far as automotive technologies, both for safety, convenience, and communications in these days. And I have someone sitting right beside me who's been on before. This is Charles. He goes by Charlie S. Stringfellow, Jr. He is the member and now the chair of the Executive Committee and Board of Directors for WANADA, and I'm going to let him tell you what that stands for. And also, he was two-time chairman of the Washington Auto Show. And Charlie, it's good to be back with you.
Good to be with you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. We make this an annual pilgrimage to come down and say hello to you and to feature everything going on. But tell us a little bit about your history with the auto show and why is this so critically important to the industry but also to the local community?
Well, the Washington Auto Show is really a two-tier show, and I believe Joe Koch, who preceded me, spoke a little bit to that fact. We have the public policy days that puts government and industry leaders together for a lot of discussion and a lot of interactive conversation. And this year we're trying to expand that with the mobility drive, or the mobility talks, and some of the other things. John O'Donnell, the president of WANADA, has been to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas because of all the innovations in the cars now and their connectivity, which is becoming a buzzword in our industry.
Now,
so,
looking at the work that you've been doing over all these years, you've seen tremendous change, and I'm going to ask you about some of that change. But looking at WANADA itself and the auto show, what kind of changes have you seen here? And you made reference to the electronic show in Las Vegas, and there is an intersect between those two.
There is indeed. The cars are very technologically advanced these days. There's so many different systems on the car that are all integrate with one another through the dashboard, through the steering wheel with all the features and functionality that's there. And all the various devices and systems in the car, from the backup camera to the lane change warning system to some of the other devices that are in the car, all geared towards safety.
Yeah. Now, looking at this thing, the intersect between safety and telecommunications, because these really are telecommunication centers, if you will, and also for comfort. So how do the auto manufacturers balance those three things, which are very critically important, and then, of course, fuel economy?
Well, if we think back, you talk about how things have developed. Once upon a time, the automakers were advertising how many cup holders the car had, and that was one of the features that was important to customers. Now it's the backup, it's the cameras, it's the screens, the touch screens in the car. And some of them now they're so advanced that you don't even have a traditional gear shift lever to engage the drive function. It's all a knob or it's a button. Different things. They're all geared towards creature comfort and feature functionality. And those things and the different systems in the cars are important to the customers. Fuel economy is important to the customer, but the importance of fuel economy goes from 1 to 4 to 5 depending on the price of gasoline. And since it's low right now, the consumer likes big vehicles. Like trucks and sport utilities.
Yeah, and this is something that's been very traditional. But I know that your work, because what you're doing really is a volunteer effort as far as being the chairman of the board for WANADA, the professional association here. But yet you really do have a job that you have to take care of as far as the dealership. How do you find the skills that you're gaining day to day in the dealership then helps you as far as dealing with all the members that you have through WANADA itself?
Well, since the board is made up of dealers We all face a lot of the same situations and the same problems, and being here in this geographic area, which is a relatively small footprint considering that it's a local trade association versus a state association, we kind of know what's going on in each other's backyard, even though we do have a 3 jurisdictional footprint: Maryland, the District of Columbia, and Virginia. There's some situations in Virginia that are not important in Maryland, or not issues in Maryland, and vice versa, and then we have some that transcend the borders. So what you experience in your day-to-day job and dealing with the employees in the dealerships is important, because it then helps me and my colleagues help address some of the bigger problems that we see as an industry.
Now, you've served on a number of very important committees within WANADA itself, as far as compensation. You're talking about employees. Also, I know you've been very involved as far as the training of future technicians to come in, and that's helped sponsor through the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. We've been very active in that. So looking at this supply chain, virtually every industry in America is running short of labor. And I understand, because it's very technically based, that you're constantly seeking new technicians to come in. How is the association addressing that?
Well, the Auto Dealer Education Institute is a critical part of that process, getting young men or young women who are interested in auto technology, mechanics, as it were, and that's really a blend now of technology and mechanics, who have that interest to come into an apprentice program through a dealership. The ADEI will provide them with tools, will provide them with training, either at Northern Virginia Community College or at Maryland Community College, and give them the classroom education they need, the book learning, so to speak, and at the same time they go to work in the afternoon in a dealership actually working on an automobile.
Now, this is one of the things that many parents are constantly pushing their children, go to college, which is fantastic and all that. But in many cases, they overlook all these high-paying, very technical jobs that are becoming, more and more prevalent. These really are the new green jobs of the future, and EmeraldPlanet is all about that. So when you're talking with parents, or you now have an open forum to parents, what would you tell them about the opportunities to come into the dealerships, to have your children become involved in the education, the training, get the national certifications, and be a part of the automotive industry?
Well, it's a great opportunity for a young man or woman to get an education and learn a skill at the same time. And auto mechanics are not what auto mechanics used to be back in the day. If you don't have,
as they say, you're not your granddad's auto mechanic, right?
That's right. If you don't have computer skills, if you can't understand all the technology and the different systems, and in addition to the training that ADEI provides, the manufacturer has training that's specific to their line of cars, even down to the model and the different systems, whether it's the emissions or the injection or the fuel system. They're all tied together, and without a computer laptop that's got the various software needed in it, you cannot adequately diagnose a car the way we used to do it.
Now, looking at these young people that are coming out, they go through, they're actually assigned to do apprenticeships within the dealerships. They finish, I believe it's a 2-year program.
That's
so
correct.
when they finish that, can they actually then go into the dealership and then continue their education? And if they can, what would that look like?
They can do exactly that. There are different modules in the ADEI program through the 2 community colleges excuse me, that cover the various systems in the car, and they're required to learn and pass each of those modules. They then have a job waiting for them because they've already been employed by a local dealership, and they can go from that sort of technician training program right into what we call a line mechanic, and they start working on cars under an apprenticeship program with a master tech in the store, and then work their way up to a C level, to a B level, and ultimately an A level. And with each of those changes comes an increase in their pay.
Now, we met before we had the television program, so you and I have known each other for a while. And even at that time, you were a legend as far as the automotive industry, and that's absolutely the truth. And you've given so much of your time to the association, to the industry itself, even as a mentor to young professionals that are coming into the dealerships. Why do you think what you've done is so important, and how is that furthering and helping to expand and strengthen the automotive industry itself?
Well, you're very flattering in your comments. Thank you very much.
It's very true.
But I just think it's important to share the knowledge that I've learned over my years of experience with those coming behind me, because there's so much history involved in what we do. Some of it's institutional history and knowledge, and some of it's just knowing what's happening in the industry. And in knowing our past, it helps us prepare for the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the dealerships, what kind of changes are they going through? Because, you hear, some years the high sales, other years low sales, but yet the dealerships continue to look like they're expanding. They're putting in better and more modern facilities. So what do you see the challenges are for the dealers, even the ones that are existing, or the others that would like to come in and have their own dealership?
Well, the cost of entry these days has gotten very, very pricey. So if you're in the business, you've got a good chance. If you're trying to get in the business, it's a bit more difficult today. Right. The manufacturers have facility initiatives. They want dealers to have image facilities that are the latest and the greatest. And included in that, of course, is modern shops with all the latest equipment that is operationally acceptable and is very efficient. Some of the equipment today, it's incredible what it can do to help the mechanic or the technician complete the job in a timely manner. So we're seeing that. We're seeing an industry that last year sold 17.5 million new cars and trucks.
That's an incredible number.
And it was a record by about 100,000 units over 2015. Mm-hmm. There's some thought that we are still got a little bit more momentum, a little bit more gas in the tank, so to speak, and that could rise or will rise in 2017.
We have about 10 seconds left. Yes. What do you see for the future growth and development of the automotive industry in the Washington, D.C. region and around the country?
What we're going to see is more electric cars. We're going to see more of the driverless car technology being developed and promoted. And Mark Fields, president of Ford Motor Company, thinks that we'll be selling gasoline.
Thank you very much for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
You did a great job. Gerry, come on, buddy.
There's more than just books at the library.
He vibrates out.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Mic up to your mouth. Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of EmeraldPlanet TV, and we're coming to you as we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, technology, services, and products as we go through the 21st century. And we're here coming to you live from the Washington Convention Center and the Washington Auto Show. And I'm sitting beside the third generation that actually helped to start this. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but it was 75. And having the third generation here, we're going to talk a little bit about that history and the changes that we've seen to the automobiles as far as the safety, the security, the telecommunications aspect, and also the comfort. This is Gerard. He goes by Gerry N. Murphy, Esquire. CAE, that's important too, President-Emeritus of the Washington Area New Automobile Dealers Association. He's also General Counsel and very actively involved from babyhood on in the Washington Auto Show. And Gerry Murphy, welcome to EmeraldPlanet TV.
Thank you, Sam.
It's always good to see you, buddy.
Indeed it is.
You're looking fabulous. Tell us a little bit about this history of your family, going all the way back to your grandfather, about actually starting the Washington Automobile Show, and then we'll talk a little bit about what that means in the 21st century.
From a practical standpoint, my grandfather, did start the auto show, but as a matter of fact, the association started before my grandfather was affiliated with it. He was a member of it because he was actually an automobile dealer himself. He flourished in the 1920s and went belly up in the Depression, and his colleagues made him the first chief of staff, the only staff, of the then Washington Automotive Trade Association that evolved into Washington Area New Auto Dealers Association, which produces the show just as they did back in 1917, which was the first one. So
that's an incredible history going back to 1917. And I wasn't being facetious about, you probably came in diapers to, some of these auto shows because I'm sure your family was very much involved in that. But the evolution of that to where we are now in the 21st century, what have your eyes seen as far as the change when you first were aware of what was really going on around you, and now that you're President-Emeritus of the association itself?
Well, it is an interesting look back, that's for sure. My grandfather was chief of CEO of the association that produced the auto show, and then my dad went to work with him subsequently, and ultimately became the CEO of the association and the producer of the show, and then I came along. So it's been a good long run. The Murphys have been here as long as the auto show in Washington has, and there's not as many auto shows as there are years in the association. We go back, we're 100 years old this year.
Right.
The association, we've had 75 auto shows. There have been periods of time when the auto show had a hiatus. Used to be in the National Guard Armory, which is still around down by RFK Stadium here in Washington. And then when they opened the new convention center over here on this side of town, and then this convention center, it rose to a whole new level. And really the difference is it's gone from a regional show, which it was, and certainly in the 1950s and 60s, and 70s for that matter. Actually, didn't exist in the 70s. Excuse me. Let me back that up. There were no auto shows in the 1970s. In the early 1980s, it was still a regional show, and then we were able to bring it around to the Tier 1 show that it is in the industry. It's one of the most important auto shows on the industry, the global industry circuit today.
Now, this is something, Gerry, I met you about 10 years or so ago, and this is something that you've really been working on as far as this Tier 1 classification, and to have the Washington Auto Show to be well respected, not only within the borders of the United States, but internationally.
Right.
And you have worked hard at that.
We have.
Why is that so important to have, one, the Tier 1 designation, and secondly, what does it bring to the industry that this show is in Washington, D.C., and be a Tier 1 show?
Well, it brings an extraordinary exposition when you become a Tier 1 show. In other words, and there's of all the auto shows around the world, in the United States alone, there's probably, I don't know, 80 or so in most of the major markets. But there's only 4 of us here in America that are OICA certified. That's a 25-cent French word for.
Well, it's the International Organization of Automobile Manufacturers.
It is
yes, I know that. Yes.
And we're an OICA certified show, along with Detroit, New York, and Los Angeles in the United States. And then you've got Paris, and you've got Frankfurt, Germany, and you got Tokyo, and those major shows are the ones where the industry takes a bow and rolls out their latest and greatest high technology. And when that happens, you get extraordinary displays that, bespeak a market like metropolitan Washington, because it's not just the fact that it's Washington, which is all important. It's also a major automobile market, a high-end market, because you've got a lot of wealth here.
And also you have a built-in added advantage of having the Congress, which is very near here, and the White House.
Yes.
Now, looking at that, of course, when you're too close, sometimes you're too close, to the stove and you get burnt.
Right.
The other side of that is the fact by being close, it allows you to influence the decision makers, of legislation and all that. So how do you have this delicate balance where you're close enough but don't get too close as far as the levers of power in the United States?
Well, it's given us an opportunity to to pretty much position the show as the public policy show on the global industry circuit, because we're the only auto show in the world that has the United States Congress down the street. And the difference, of course, that makes is that the U.S. Congress are partners in automotive design with the OEMs, for better or worse. And that's not just in the United States; that's an international phenomenon. So the automakers want to put out their best presentation in a market like Washington, and at an auto show like the Washington Auto Show, because you've got the Congress, President's down the street. President Obama came over and we gave him a tour of the show back in, I think, 2013. And,
the whole thing about this is having that juxtaposition is really critically important. But the other side of that, and you and I have talked about this several times, you have 100 and almost 80 embassies that are represented here. And that's what's led to this dialogue that you've established. Tell us a little more about the dialogue, this international dialogue among people all over the globe, and having the embassy so close here, because I've had 5 ambassadors I've invited that actually have been here this week.
That really underscores the internationalness of the show, and with the global industry, with the world becoming a smaller place, year in and year out, having the embassies here is important and helpful, because we can establish, as we did earlier last week, the industry media days, where we're able to bring in regulators and industry leaders from the car producing countries of the world, and have dialogue, have conversations, establish symposium panels to discuss things like the autonomous car and the connected car, and
also cybersecurity and other critical issues.
Yeah, and that was very much at the core of what our industry media days were all about. And again, it's unique to Washington, because Washington, in addition to having the U.S. government here, the federal government, also has, as you point out, all these embassies.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about this is having the internationals here is very important, because Washington, D.C., for better or worse, is one of an international capital.
Indeed.
Facility. In many ways, it's as much or more a European city than it is, an American city. and having all these embassies just enhances all that.
Yeah.
But looking at the association itself, we've talked about the industry, we've talked about the cars, but the association itself, how has that helped to leverage what you're doing with the dealers, the dealer members that you have, to make them feel like that you're very much important, but you're important not only to your buyers, but also to the industry itself?
The association's job, any association's job, any trade association's job, is to make their members be all they can be. And our members are very influential and important parts of the auto industry because of how important the Washington regional market is. I mean, it's a vibrant, important market where they sell an awful lot of cars, a lot of high-end cars, as I mentioned. But then in addition to that, we're Washington, and it's the seat of power. It's the focus of the regulatory side, the legal side of the automobile business, and that spotlight is something that helps our members immeasurably. I mean, to be hosts, if you will, of a major Tier 1 auto show is quite a feather in their hat. And if it's a feather in their hat, then it's a feather in the people who run the association's hat too.
And also to the community itself.
Indeed.
We're just about running out of time, but I also want to talk about just the cars. What's the fun aspect of the automobiles that you've seen over the number of years that you've been involved in WANADA and the Washington Auto Show?
Well, it's really been a aggressive move toward high technology. I mean, these cars today do everything but shave your face while you're driving down the road. I mean, they're getting increasingly more autonomous to the extent that from a safety standpoint, I mean, they'll apply the brakes if you're not applying them, and they've got all the backup lights so you keep from banging into the wall and having those pesky body shop visits. But the communications that are in the car today, to say nothing of the creature comforts like the fabulous stereo systems. I'm dating myself. I call it a stereo system. I don't know what they call it today.
It's
the
incredible,
music
but
system.
the music system. About 10 seconds.
Yes,
what do you see for the growth and expansion of WANADA?
It's going to continue to grow and be a factor on the global industry circuit.
That's fantastic. This is Gerry Murphy, who is Esquire, who is the former President-Emeritus, and thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother.
My son.
My sister-in-law.
Were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember
what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America. Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, An up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr.
I'm
Sam.
the Executive Director of Emerald Planet and EmeraldPlanet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And I'm interviewing someone sitting right beside me who is a very famous radio man in Washington, D.C. This is Les Jackson. He is a co-host and technical expert for what's called Cruise Control Radio, automotive consultant and president of the Washington Automotive Press Association. And also he's been in the industry for quite a number of years and has a great deal of expertise as we've seen tremendous changes in the automotive industry. Les, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Very glad to be here. It's always fun when we talk about cars.
I tell you, and we're sitting in a very beautiful location right now. But let's start off with that, and let's forget about the history a little bit,
Sure.
about your marvelous background and all that. What is so much fun about the new automobiles?
It's the technology. There is so much technology, safety, environmental. Everything is just coming together. It's all coalescing right now. It's been coming on for about 5 years with electronics, with telematics, with the buzzword, of course, is autonomy. And we're there, but we're not there. And it's just exciting. And as a person with a physics and engineering background, I'm obsessed with knowing how all this works. So I just eat it up.
I tell you, I think it's absolutely fantastic, Les. And you're part of a very important association, the Press Association for the Automotive Industry here in Washington, D.C.
That's correct.
And so the juxtaposition of being here, just like the National Press Club, there's one of those in reality in each country, and there's one of you in reality in the United States. So how does all of that fit together of having the press and having a Tier 1 international auto show right here in your own backyard?
Well, it fits beautifully because we are, of course, the automotive press. We're the ones who write or somehow report or whatever the media is on regulation, on safety, on environment, and of course we test and review the products. I'm very lucky that for 28 years I've been testing and reviewing new vehicles on a weekly basis. I test about 100 vehicles a year. I don't own a car because I don't have to. They bring me endless vehicles, and every one is a new lesson to learn.
Now, looking at that and going to the environment, this is something that, Emerald Planet is all about, this intersect of the economy and the environment. But looking at the environment side, we talk about the fun, the electronics, all the gadgets, as we could say. But on the environment side, there's been great strides and great advancements in that. What are some of those, Les, that you've seen, say, over the last 5-10 years?
Well, one of the first things that I've seen people don't realize is how clean conventional gasoline-powered engines are. They're not perfectly clean. They do pollute. But they're 156 times cleaner than engines were in 1969, 1970, when engines ran very well. But they polluted tremendously, and that's an enormous advance. And the engines themselves are getting smaller with more horsepower. A four-cylinder engine today puts out as much power as medium-sized V8s of 25 years ago. That's very important, as is the machining of all those parts, everything that goes into it. It's a highly technical, highly engineered product, but it can't be sustained. We're going to run out of oil, and everybody in the auto industry knows it. That's why you see so much attention to electrifying vehicles, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, pure battery electrics, fuel cell. Everybody in the industry knows about 18 to 20 more years of gasoline, and then it's going to be gone for practical use in cars.
Now, looking at it, you always need a ramp-up time. In other words,
Yes.
there needs to be a transition, and we've probably over these last 10 to 15 years has been this transition into more and more electrics, even the hydrogen cars, and now you're getting air compression and all other kinds of
That's right.
technologies that's going away from fossil fuels. Looking at this next, as you were saying, 18 to 20 years, when we think we need to be off of that, what changes do you see that you project less that's coming for the automobiles as we see them even, today?
Well, the changes, first, everything in the automobile now is electrically controlled. All the steering is electric. The ABS, the brake system is electric. Even your accelerator pedal is electric. It's just a drive-by-wire. It's a volume switch. Nothing is really connected anymore to the front end. It's still safe. But all of this lends itself to the ability for the 9 computers on average in each car to actually control the car for you. And the reason that's a good thing is because the sensors in cars are about 150 times faster than you and I can sense things. You and I have about a half a second reaction time. Imagine being able to react 150 times faster than
That's just an incredible thought.
So why not let the car do that? And that's why all of this technology is blending together for vehicles to ultimately drive themselves, which will not happen overnight. I mean, they're here. I've been in them. But you can't have one.
The whole thing about it is just like with the cell phones and advances there.
Right.
It's really a computer that also serves as a telephone. Cars really are a computer, and they serve as a people mover. So
Very true.
what do you see the transition over the next 10 years in this emphasis on the technology, the Internet of Things, and also the electronics of a people mover?
Right now, any of these vehicles that has a screen in it, which is probably 90% of them, you can, with Ford Sync and Uconnect from Chrysler and whatever the name might be, they're all the same. You can load everything on your smartphone right into the car. It's your smartphone rolling, and this is a good thing. It won't take away your tendency to be distracted, but at least it's all there in the car. And that means the automobile is no longer just a piece of transportation to go from point A to point B. It's your rolling home. It's your rolling office. And it's going to ultimately free you from the traffic driving portion so that you can run your life, as complex and difficult as it might be, from the car. And
we've always had that, Les, though, the proverbial love affair of the Americans with their American car. But it sounds like this is going to have a, not slightly, but maybe a profound different impact on our lives than what we've had in the past. So how do you keep the emotion? This is the real question. How do you keep the emotion with all of this technology built in? Or does it enhance the emotion?
I don't think it does. I think there are a lot of us in the industry who write about the industry who see a trend. It's a very obvious trend, especially millennials. They're really not in love with the automobile. They're in love with efficiency. And part of that efficiency is changing the entire ownership dynamic. You're already seeing Zipcar and all of these car sharing things. All of the manufacturers are either buying share companies or they're creating their own car share companies because they know the ownership equation is very likely to change. And it makes sense because when you own a car, 99% of the time it sits in the driveway not being used.
And people don't like that efficiency, and the millennials are all about efficiency. But looking at that, this whole sharing of the automobile is something that people have been talking about now for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's only going to accelerate. So how do you think the automobile manufacturers and then the dealerships are going to be able to adjust to this so they're meeting the needs of these new millennials that are coming on and younger generations, but at the same time continue to provide the convenience and this connectedness, with nature, with everything that's around them?
That's an interesting problem. I'm glad I'm not one of the ones that has to solve it, but fortunately this is happening at a slow enough rate that the dealers, who are very, very good businessmen and women, they can figure out where the revenue is to be made and where it isn't to be made. The manufacturers still have to produce all these vehicles because we need something to ride around in, but the dealer might become his own ride-share organization or a central depot where you can go get these, and there's great money to be made if you stay aware of how the industry is changing.
How is the Uberization, the Lyftization of the industry impacting either the automobile manufacturers, the dealers, or just the concept of this shared space that we have going on around us?
It's impacting tremendously. Most of the manufacturers that I've talked to are aware of it, and they're making plans. A few are in denial and just saying, well, it's not going to happen, which is a dangerous thing to do.
Because it is happening.
It's happening, and you have to just always be aware of what's going on. So I believe this is a little bit similar to what happened to the textile industry about 50 years ago, where they were quite happy, and then all of a sudden it started changing, and many of them didn't see it coming.
Well, we have to close with there. We only have probably about 10 seconds, and I really appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure.
And it's a fantastic organization that you're a part of. This is Les Jackson. He is the co-host and technical expert of Cruise Control Radio. I love that name. Automotive consultant and president of the Washington Automotive Press Association. And thank you for being with us as we come to you live from the Washington Convention Center and the Washington Auto Show as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.